Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend, and I'm marketing operations here at Smarty. Today's webinar is about the ways telecom and internet companies can leverage address data, and we're very excited to get started. However, before introducing our presenters, let me review a few housekeeping items. One, this webinar will be recorded. We'll be sending it out to everyone who registered, so you can be looking for that in your email inbox later today. That also means if you have to step out, you'll still be able to view the content later, and that you'll be able to forward that video on to those that you think may benefit from it. So be looking for that in your inbox later today. Second, to interact with our presenters and other audience members, please feel free to use the chat and Q&A feature inside of the Zoom webinar interface. We'll be looking at those frequently and bringing up as many questions as we can. We want to make sure that you're getting out of this webinar what you hoped to, and the best way to do that is to bring up questions so that we can answer those. All right, so presenting for us today, we have John Hickey, one of our product marketing managers, and Jeffrey Duncan, senior technical product manager with us. So we're very excited to hear what you guys are going to share. So without further ado, John and Jeffrey. I was trying to decide who to say first. I'll say John.
Okay.
Because he's in marketing.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I want to thank Andrew and Jeffrey for helping with this webinar. We are going to do our best to make sure that you get some value to and ideas on how to do your jobs better. So 6 ways telecom and internet companies leverage address data. There are actually more than 6 ways. In fact, I just finished an article on 61 ways, which I'll tell you how to access at the end of the presentation. But for today, we're going to focus on network planning, asset management. One moment, just move something on my screen. There we go. All right, asset management. Customer acquisition and retention, data blending, mail and parcel delivery, and fraud reduction. So network planning. Let's just start with some of the challenges. I'm not going to go into detail here as I feel like you're the choir and I would just be preaching to you. I think you're all very familiar with some of the network planning challenges that you have. But I think it's instructive just to go through a few of those. Where inaccurate address data can make things difficult. It can create lots of duplicate records and create difficulty in getting funding for new infrastructure. I'm thinking maybe of BEAD initiatives here. Create uncertainty about meeting statutory requirements. And then another challenge we have is understanding the area and the people. We need location details like how many units are in a building, and people details like their demographics. And bad data also makes it hard to identify expansion opportunities, like where's their peak demand and are we missing underserved areas? So what I'm going to do is introduce you to 5 address data tools that are going to help you with network planning, and 5 steps as well, where step number 1 is cleaning the address data that you already have in your database with address verification. Guessing most of you are familiar with verification already, but if not, we'll just run through a quick scenario to illustrate how things work. Let's say your customer support folks are on the phone with a customer and they take down the customer's address and they get everything perfect, except the customer support rep doesn't know that the standardized way to represent Northwest is just an abbreviation. Let's say that customer comes through one of your online forms later and they're distracted, they're in a hurry, so they misspell Pennsylvania and Washington. They place Northwest in front of Avenue. They transpose a couple digits in the zip code. So these are 2 addresses that represent the same location, but unless you've got some very sophisticated programming in your database to identify these as the same, you're not going to know that. So that's where address verification tool comes into play, where first, address verification will parse all the address components into individual fields and then conduct a normalization and a standardization on the data, such as changing Northwest to capital N, capital W. And once a standardized address is matched or identified, then the system will match the standardized address to our authoritative database. And this is essentially address verification.
Yeah. And John, one of the things you mentioned, you're talking about customer support, and I see that Northwest in there. Certainly, you can train employees to use NW instead of Northwest. And those typos, those can't all be trained out because people in England will spell theater with an RE at the end versus ER, as we do in North America. So you can't scale that kind of training because it just doesn't work, but you can, utilizing our system to standardize it, you can scale it that way.
Right. Okay, one thing I wanted to point out is that the customer support and online form addresses are known as aliases of the standardized address, and we're going to refer to that term of alias moving forward in this presentation. All right, step number 2. So step number 1, you've cleaned your data. Step number 2 is how do you keep your data clean moving forward? There's a tool called Address Autocomplete that helps you with that. And this is how Spectrum is utilizing Address Autocomplete at their homepage. At the top of their homepage, they have a field for a user to input their address. And so I started inputting Smarty's address here. And with each keystroke I entered, there was a list of verified addresses presented to me. And that's an important point, is that every address presented is already verified, correct, and standardized in standardized format. So as I hit 2335, the address here at Smarty came up. And then notice it becomes for the user a simple point and click to get a correct address into your database. So good user experience and ensures accurate data coming in. There's an added benefit where the easier you make it for people to complete your forms, the greater the form conversion rate should be. So we entered the address to check availability of plans that Spectrum offers in my area. One kind of cool thing they do is that address then follows you around through your session at the Spectrum website. So as I was going through looking at plans in my area and I went to check out to purchase a plan, I didn't have to re-enter my verified correct address. It just followed me around. So that made it the checkout process a bit easier.
Looks like you had about 4 or 5 keystrokes. That's almost the same as putting in your zip code anyway.
Yeah.
So after 5 keystrokes, you had a fully verified address and didn't have to do anything else.
Yes.
Cool.
Yep. And is it correct, Jeffrey, that after the first keystroke, suggestions are being made?
Oh, sure. Because anything you put in, if you put in a 1, we no longer return any results or even consider results that don't have a 1 in them. So it's narrowing immediately.
And it's also correct that this can be localized to an area.
Yeah.
Is that right, the results?
Yeah, so these ones, we are located in Provo, Utah. So when you type in 2335, certainly that exists in other parts of the country, but because you are here in Provo, those are the first ones that are returned.
Okay, so that was step 2. So we talked about cleaning your existing data. We've talked about a tool to keep your data clean. Step number 3 is gathering all the addresses for the area that you're examining and being able to map those with accurate rooftop geocodes. So Smarty offers the US master address list. It contains 210 million addresses in the United States, including 20 million non-USPS addresses. Can you explain that? What a US non-USPS address is?
Certainly. So a non-USPS is any address that exists outside of the realm of what the USPS handles, the US Postal Service handles. These could be addresses in rural areas. Many small towns and even remote areas have boxes, highway boxes where mail is delivered to. And so the people that live in that town can receive their mail, but Amazon delivers to them to the house, not to the mailbox. So there's also a physical address. So the non-postal addresses are the actual addresses of the structures or the homes, even though the U.S. Postal Service doesn't recognize that address or doesn't deliver there.
So you can get a pizza there, you just can't get your mail there.
Yep, certainly.
Okay, so we talked about mapping all these addresses by geocoordinates. We give you rooftop accurate geocoordinates, and that is we make it available for as many as possible, which is about what percent?
97% right now. Of all the addresses that come into our system, about 97%, we're able to return a rooftop or parcel, a geocode.
Great. So then, once you've got all the addresses and you've cleaned up your addresses, you're able to overlay your customer locations upon this map with all the addresses. So, like in this little map scenario here, the red dots might represent who your customers are, and the yellow dots might represent who your prospects are. And we'll dive a little more into this map just in a few minutes here. Okay, step 4. So you've got all the addresses, you've got your addresses cleaned up, they're mapped, and now it's time to add some context to your map by enriching the data that you have. Not only enriching your customers' data set, but that entire list of all addresses as well. And you can enrich the data in a couple different ways. One is enriching data about the property or the location, and the other is utilizing census information to enrich data about the people who live at those properties. So for Smarty, we offer over 350 data points on property data that we categorize under 3 categories of location, structure, and financial. And just a few of those 350 data points would include things like we've mentioned the rooftop geocode, the RDI, the residential delivery indicator, which tells you whether a property is residential or commercial, the size of the property. For structure, we tell you the year built, elevation, how many stories, roof material and type, and vacancy. And you can imagine for placing equipment, this might be valuable information to you. And financial, you can get the market value of the property, who the deed owner is, and mortgage amount. So a couple of the data points that we deliver in our data property offering are census block and tract. And with that information, then you can tie into census demographics, which include things like population counts and poverty rates for areas, household income, employment status, education level, what language is spoken at the home, race, ethnicity, age, and sex. So a lot of rich context to help you understand when doing network planning what the areas are like. All right, final step. Analyze and make some good decisions. So this map here is one that I've just created for illustration purposes, mostly just so that I could illustrate that if you don't happen to have a data analytics department or access to an analyst, you can still utilize these tools and make some powerful spatial insights that help you yield some confident business decisions. So let's take a look at this and do a little bit of analysis just from an intuitive visual perspective. If you look, you can see there's a high concentration of customers in the oh, sorry, I forgot to explain what the numbers were. The white numbers represent hundreds of thousands of dollars for market value for that property. So you can see for properties of 800,000 or more, you've been successful marketing to those people. The higher market value properties are more likely to accept maybe upgrade campaigns. You might also notice down in the bottom right, there are a number of high market value properties that you don't currently service. Sorry, I forgot to tell you also the green line represents fiber line. So this is a fiber internet company scenario. You're not supplying fiber down that road where there's a very good high target audience. So you might consider expansion there. And you might notice on the top row and the leftmost column, there are some of the lower market value properties, which might suggest entry-level messaging for them. Here in the cul-de-sac, you're not running fiber down that road there. And you may want to exclude those people from your mail list, as it might be frustrating for them to get fiber offers. Like I continue to get Google Fiber offers, and they don't offer fiber in my area. I've called them 5 times.
Yeah, and you know that for sure.
That's really annoying. So you might want to exclude them. And one tool that we haven't talked about is reverse geocoding. And one application here possibly is if you see the property in the top right corner, where we would give you the geo coordinates. You can input those coordinates and find out, it will tell you the 10 nearest addresses. And so you might use that as a way to more efficiently exclude addresses from your mailings. And then, of course, something like this is also helpful for if you're working on BEAD initiatives for compliance and reporting. All right, so in summary for network planning, we've introduced you to 5 tools: address verification, autocomplete, master address list, geocoding, and enrichment, which help you improve data accuracy, understand the area and the people, and also identify expansion opportunities. So that's network planning. Let's take a look now at asset management. So it's safe to assume that you're all very interested in knowing where your network assets are. And precise addresses with geo coordinates help you make sense and know where that stuff is, so that when you're sending out your technicians to troubleshoot and maintain upgrades, they're more efficiently finding those locations. And importantly, it helps with accounting and reporting. We have a client I'll share a case study with and make up the street names and information, but this is a true case study where they, well, first let me just draw your attention to this image here, where there's a building with some telecom equipment on the corner of 2 streets, Main Street and let's say it's State Street. And the company was having issues with their reporting. They knew something was off, but they didn't know what was causing it. And so, as you might imagine, what caused it, their reporting issues was that property that had their equipment had a valid address on Main Street and also a valid address on State Street. And so those 2 addresses were pointing to the exact same delivery location. And so the company ended up double counting their assets, and that threw their reporting off. So they're utilizing our services to take care of that now. So it's interesting that a single delivery point can actually have more than a couple aliases. Jeffrey, what's the most you've encountered?
Oh, gosh, I could, I think 11. At places where the street name or the house number of the location has changed. That's a lot of changes, and we track all of those because we treat every version of that address as an alias to the final address that it resolves to. Yeah.
Okay. What are some of the reasons that people encounter or aliases are actually even created?
Sure. So cities, when they renumber their streets, people already have a house number. So they have to figure out how to fit that in. So when the city renumbers their streets so that the houses are the appropriate, the house numbers are the appropriate distance along the street, they'll renumber them. Street names change often, not often, but street names can change. Here in Provo, there was a prominent high school, and a street right next to that high school was called Bulldog Boulevard. Previously, it was 1120 North. That school moved, and then that street became Cougar Avenue, or Cougar Lane, sorry. So that's 3 street name changes, and none of the residents can do anything about it. Their street name just changed. We keep track of that. If you give us that first one, that 1120 North address, we will correct it to the now current one, which is Cougar. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, long street name, doesn't fit on some street signs. can be abbreviated, sometimes not, but it can go down to MLKJ Boulevard. And then in New York City, you have Fifth Avenue, Sixth Avenue, that is Avenue of the Americas for just 4 or 5 blocks. And then it turns back into, I said Fifth Avenue, it turns back into the Avenue Street where it was Avenue of the Americas. So those aliases exist. There's lots of them out there, and that's not even talking about misspellings. So there's lots of aliases. We try to resolve all of them, and we maintain that list.
So if like Main Street were changed to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, which has happened, I think, close to 100 times in cities around the country.
Sure.
Every building on that street would have had a name change, and the previous Main Street address would all be alias addresses of the new standardized address.
Yep.
Okay. So for asset management, you can, we talked about how address verification identifies the standardized address for aliases, but there's even an easier way to go about this, and that's with a persistent unique identifier. So Smarty offers something called Smarty Street or Smarty Key. It's our persistent unique identifier. There's just one Smarty key per delivery point or location, and the key never changes despite underlying changes for the address. Like this building in the image here would have a Smarty key that never changed despite Main Street being changed to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. So it just makes identification of aliases easier. And here's a little illustration where we're using our previous incorrect alias address at the top of this image. And it shares the exact same Smarty key as the standardized address at the bottom of the image.
Yeah.
It's 10 digits. Why is it 10 digits?
Because that was big enough, but not too big.
Right. So some of the benefits of representing an address by just a 10-digit number is efficient processing. If you're crunching lots of data, this can really help.
Yeah. Now, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
That image that you have there with Main Street and State Street, the workers, if a worker walks to work and they live on State Street, they would enter from the State Street side. And when they called to order pizza, they would identify that location as State Street. Someone from the other side would identify it as Main Street. There's nothing wrong with both of those names. We simply, for standardization purposes, provide that key and provide the standardized name of that location, but both of them would be acceptable still.
Okay. So one of the other benefits of a persistent unique identifier is protecting personally identifiable information, where you're able to represent an address by a randomly generated number that can't be tied back to the address in any way. And this key is also useful in joining Smarty data sets. Smarty offers property data right now. Jeffrey, are you able to talk any about our roadmap for data sets?
Mm-hmm. Well, we get data from the U.S. Postal Service. We also get data from another company that helps us with our geocode data and helps us to have non-postal data sets. We have introduced a data set from that is where we get the property information, and we are constantly looking for additional data sets that would provide real value for our clients. Business name is one that we are looking at to be able to provide the name of the business for a certain location.
Okay, so property data, though, in general, we're looking at adding additional data sets. So
yeah,
a Smarty key would help join all those different data sets in the future. Okay, so now let's take a look at customer acquisition and retention. It's been commonly said that 80% of all data has a spatial component. And this is good news for marketers who want to leverage enriched data for improved acquisition effectiveness. So you can imagine with a bird's eye view how you might target mailings more efficiently, or especially like with billboards, not only where to place those billboards, but the type of messaging to put on those billboards by area. Customer acquisition is largely, from a marketing standpoint, of building this 360-degree view of the customer. So we talked about property data and census data that can help with that. And let's shift now to retention side of things. Retention is often about the customer's experience with your company, with your products, with your support team. It's about customer satisfaction, and address data solutions can help with this on the pre-purchase side of things. From, we've talked about address autocomplete, making it easier to complete forms and yielding the benefit of a higher conversion rate on your form fills. On the post-purchase side, it can be about getting the equipment, communications, and bills to the right place in a timely manner. And it seems funny that getting a bill to somebody would improve their customer experience and satisfaction, but if you don't, then and their service gets shut off unexpectedly, that's a bad experience. All right. Now let's talk about data blending. There's some challenges you as telecom and internet companies most likely face. You most likely have massive amounts of data entering multiple silos from multiple different sources. And another challenge, besides just the volume and the number of places it's coming from and going to, is conflicting address data, possibly in each of these inputs. So the question is, how do you join and blend that data? And here, just to remind ourselves, there are many sources of address data coming into your company. You've got customer service interactions where the customer service person put in Northwest before Avenue, or third party where it came in perfect, except it wasn't a standardized address and they spelled out Northwest. You've got someone doing service installations who wrote Pennsylvania Drive instead of Avenue, and salespeople who are multitasking who wrote down Northeast instead of Northwest. And then let's say you're using address autocomplete on your forms in applications online, and you got the exact correct standardized address. Well, 5 different sources and 5 different addresses in this case.
John, it occurs to me that with each of these different roles that you talked about, none of them have the role of knowing the right address. Customer service shouldn't be concerned about getting the address spelled correctly. They just want to take care of the customer. And service installation, they're not there to check the address. They're there to perform the service they went there for. Sales also just wants to make sales. So we can do what we do best and let you guys do what you do best.
Yeah, it's a good point to point out that address verification does work as an interface for your people who talk with customers, such as support and sales. You can integrate address autocomplete with your CRM so that when people are on the phone with customers, as they're typing in address in the CRM system, it starts auto-suggesting the verified addresses, and then it makes it, far less error prone, and you capture exact, correct standardized addresses. Your customer support and salespeople just point and click to fill out the rest of the address. So, okay, so the solutions, we've already talked about them: address verification, standardizing, verifying, and matching out alias records, but Smarty Key making things easier. And the goal here and the outcomes are being able to blend data into a single squeaky clean source of address truth. Okay, mail and parcel delivery. This is likely the most obvious use case for correct or good address data. I think it's interesting to point out that more than 20% of addresses entered online contain mistakes, according to many reports. This is especially difficult for people using mobile phones, who it's just so easy to fat finger something when you're trying to enter it online on a phone. But with address verification autocomplete, you can make sure that the bills and communications and equipment get delivered to the right place the first time, which reduces wasted shipping costs, duplicate material handling, and customer support related to someone not getting their information. And you can reduce carrier chargebacks for returned items, which can add up pretty quick into some significant costs. You can improve customer satisfaction, stop contributing to churn. You never know when what straw is going to break the camel's back and cause somebody to churn from you to a competitor. You can increase positive customer reviews while hopefully avoiding the negative ones. And this is just a review or a comment we've had from a customer that they saw using our services, their undeliverable shipping rate fall from 5% to less than 1%, which represents tons of savings for them. In fact, I've seen other comments from customers that said this represents hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings for them.
Sure, a shipping rate, it's pretty easy to lower the missed shipments rate because you can know up front if the address is going to be deliverable or not. That's what we provide.
Okay. Yep. All right. So that's mail and parcel delivery. The last thing we're going to talk about today is fraud reduction and talk about some fraud schemes that utilize fake or vacant addresses. Subscription fraud, people will give you bogus information to be able to get smartphones really, really cheap and then turn around and sell them. They also will skip out on bills sometimes. There's offer fraud where people will give you a wrong address in order to qualify for promotional offers or discounts you might intend for other audiences. And there's credit score fraud where people are trying to hide their bad credit from you. So a key in fraud reduction is just identifying those attempts early, which our tools help you do. And that is the presentation. I think we're moving into Q&A right now, but if you want to keep learning about these issues, if they're of interest to you, just go to smarty.com and there you will see we offer demos, live demos and free trials. You can demo all of our tools without signing up for a free trial at our website. But if you want to get 1,000 free lookups and be able to test integrating our APIs with your systems, we offer you the free trial also. And then there are product pages on every tool that we talked about here: address verification, autocomplete, geocoding, enrichment, and master address lists. I mentioned before that coming soon is an article on 61 ways telecom companies can use address tools to improve business performance. That should be out in the next week or so. If you want to be sure to be notified, you can sign up for our newsletter at smarty.com/newsletter. And finally, if you're at a place where you have questions for an address expert, you're certainly welcome to contact us at smarty.com contact. So with that,
excellent. So a couple questions, John. With the live demos and free trials, I know we have a live demo of our bulk tool. You can validate up to 10 addresses at a time. You can upload a spreadsheet there. What if I want to get a demo of the property data that we're going to get? Where can I learn more about that?
there is a property data demo, and you will find a link to it if you go to smarty.com and navigate to our property data product page. There'll be a link there and you can do a demo.
Yep. Excellent. And you'll be able to see everything that we've got there. That's great. We have run over time. I appreciate everybody that has come and watched this webinar. Hopefully it answered the questions that you came hoping to get answered. Like John said, if you still have more to talk about, visit smarty.com/contact or anywhere on the Smarty domain, smarty.com. There's a little chat icon in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can click on that and chat with us. We're always there, real humans.
Yep, real humans.
Right there, ready to
not
answer
bots.
your questions. So hopefully that gives you what you're looking for. Thanks, John. Thanks, Jeffrey. We hope everybody had a great time, and we hope we see you at future webinars.